ibn al-Wali ibn al-Walid ibn Mughira al-Makhzumi was born around 585 CE in Makkah into one of the most aristocratic and powerful clans of Quraysh, Banu Makhzum. This clan was entrusted with the banner of war of the Luwa and the command of the Quraysh cavalry, meaning from childhood Khalid was literally raised on horseback and trained in every art of pre-Islamic Arabian warfare. His father, al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, was among the wealthiest and most influential men of Makkah. Had basically taken her, once described in the Quran itself as the one who considered his wealth and children would make him immortal. Surah al-Mudaththir. Khalid grew up in an environment of absolute privilege, silk, perfume, the finest weapons, and the expectation that he would become a great leader. Even in Jahiliyyah, Khalid's military genius was obvious. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a commanding presence and piercing eyes, he was a natural warrior. He mastered the spear, sword, bow, and above all the tactics of desert warfare, rapid flanking maneuvers, feigned retreats, and the use of terrain. The Arabs used to say, if Khalid is in the battlefield, defeat is impossible for his side. When Prophet Muhammad began preaching Islam, Banu Makhzum became one of the fiercest enemies of the new faith. Khalid, like most young Qurayshi nobles, viewed Islam as a direct threat to the prestige, wealth, and ancestral religion of his tribe. He participated in the persecution, had basically of early Muslims, and fought against them in every major confrontation before his conversion. The turning point for Khalid's reputation and the greatest disaster for the Muslims until that time came at the Battle of Uhud in 3 AH, say 625 CE. At Uhud, the Quraysh army of 3,000 faced about 700 Muslims. Initially, the Muslims gained the upper hand. The Prophet had posted 50 archers on a small hill, a Jabal al-Ruma, with strict orders. Do not leave your position even if you see birds picking at our bodies. When the Quraysh began to flee, most archers abandoned their post to collect war booty. Khalid, commanding the Quraysh right wing of cavalry, instantly saw the opening. With lightning speed, he wheeled his horsemen around the mountain pass, attacked the Muslim archers from the rear, and then crashed into the main Muslim army from behind. What had been a Muslim victory turned into chaos. The Muslims were suddenly surrounded on three sides. The Prophet himself was wounded. The rumor of his death spread, and scores of great companions were martyred, including Musab ibn Umar and Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. May Allah be pleased with them. It was Khalid's brilliant flanking maneuver that transformed the battle. Abu Sufyan, the overall Quraysh commander, later admitted the victory at Uhud was Khalid's, not mine. For years afterward, Khalid remained one of the most feared enemies of Islam. He commanded units at the Battle of the Trench. The Muslims, though, won through divine intervention, and he was present at Hudaybiyah, where the treaty was signed. Yet something was changing inside him. The calm dignity of the Prophet, the courage of the Muslims, despite their small numbers, and perhaps the memory of the Quranic verses revealed about his own father began to work on his heart. By 8 AH 629 CE, 6 years after Hudaybiyah, Khalid could no longer resist the truth. One night he dreamt that he was leaving a narrow, barren land and entering a vast green pasture. When he woke up, he said to himself, "This dream can only mean one thing." He set out secretly for Medina. On the way, he met Amr ibn al-Az and Uthman ibn Ta, two other future great Muslims, who were also traveling to accept Islam. Together, they entered the mosque. The Prophet saw Khalid approaching, and his face lit up with joy. He said, "Praise be to Allah who has guided you. I have always known that you possessed great intelligence, and I hoped that it would guide you to good." Khalid pledged allegiance, and with tears in his eyes said, "O Messenger of Allah, pray for my forgiveness for all the enmity I showed you." The Prophet replied gently, if Islam wipes out everything that came before it, from the man who had almost destroyed Islam at Uhud emerged the greatest military genius the Ummah would ever know, Sayfullah, the sword of Allah, unsheathed for the defense of the faith he once tried to extinguish. Acceptance of Islam, the year was 8 AH 629 to 630 CE. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah, signed 2 years earlier, had completely changed the political landscape of Arabia. What had looked like a humiliating compromise for the Muslims, one-sided terms, no pilgrimage that year. Returning runaways turned out to be a divine masterstroke. Quraysh's prestige cracked. Tribe after tribe began entering Islam in droves. Even the fiercest hearts in Makkah started to soften. Khalid ibn al-Walid was 8 years old at the peak of his fame and skill. He had led the cavalry that nearly destroyed the Muslim army at Uhud. He had stood with Abu Sufyan the trench, yet something gnawed at him. He later recounted that whenever he tried to sleep after Hudaybiyah, he saw a recurring dream. He was standing in a narrow, arid, thorny land, suffocating, and then suddenly stepping out into vast green pastures full of water and shade. Every time he woke up, the same thought struck him. This narrow land is the falsehood I am in, and the green pasture is Islam. He could fight the feeling no longer. One night in Safar 8 AH, Khalid quietly left Makkah with the intention of going to Medina and embracing Islam. on the way, he met two other prominent Qurayshi men who were traveling for the exact same purpose. Umar ibn al-As, the future conqueror of Egypt, and Uthman ibn Talha, the future keeper of the Kaaba keys. The three rode together and encouraging one another. Khalid said, "How clear the truth has become to us, yet we still delay." When they arrived in Medina, they first went to the house of Khalid's brother, al-Walid ibn al-Walid, who had already been Muslim for years and had fought at Badr and Uhud on the Muslim side. The brother was overjoyed and immediately took Khalid to the Prophet. The Prophet was sitting in the mosque with a group of companions. When he saw Khalid approaching, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the distinctive turban and armor of a Qurayshi noble, his face lit up with one of the brightest smiles the companions had ever seen. The Prophet stood up, something he rarely did for anyone, and opened his arms. Khalid came forward, his heart pounding. He greeted the Prophet and said, "O Messenger of Allah, I have come to declare there is no God but Allah, and that you are His messenger. I bear witness that Islam is the truth." The Prophet embraced him warmly and said, "请问们这汉字的这个有关那用的特别是当外和我的阿巴瓦山，在全部包含里都给我付费。可是多呢，因好为人他一个2个突然你买过，也很多，因为同样不能我因还是因要我人家那样不讲要不如就说 Praises be to Allah who has guided you. Allah who can who has guided you. I have always seen intelligence in you, and I hoped that it would lead you only to good." Khalid's eyes filled with tears, overwhelmed with shame for his past. He said, "O Messenger of Allah, you know how fiercely I fought against you. Pray to Allah to forgive me for everything I did in opposition to you." The Prophet replied with infinite mercy, Islam wipes out everything that came before it, then added the when you are toward and hijrah migration for Allah's sake wipes out what was before it, and felt as if a mountain had been lifted from his chest. From that moment, the man who had once been the deadliest enemy of Islam became one of its greatest defenders. Only months later, at Mu'tah, he would save the Muslim army from annihilation and earn the title by which the world remembers him, Sayfullah, the sword of Allah. The Prophet later said about the three men who arrived together that day, Allah has honored Islam with three men Khalid ibn al-Walid, ibn al-Az, and Uthman ibn Talha. A former enemy had become a brother, and the Ummah had just received one of the greatest gifts Allah would ever bestow upon it. In Jumada al-Awwal 8 September 629 C. Eve. Only a few months after Khalid ibn al-Walid embraced Islam, the Prophet decided to send an expedition to the northern borders of Arabia. A Muslim emissary, al-Harith ibn Umar al-Azdi, had been murdered by the Ghassanid governor, Shurabil ibn al-Ghassani, an act that, in Arab custom, demanded retaliation. The Prophet appointed a small force of just over 3,000 men and named 3 successive commanders. Zayd ibn Haritha, the Prophet's freed slave and adopted son. If Zayd was martyred, Jafar ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin and brother of Ali. If Jafar fell, Abdullah ibn Rawaha, the poet of Islam, Khalid ibn al-Walid. Walid was merely one of the soldiers, no rank, no command. He had been Muslim for less than 6 months. The Muslim army marched north and reached modern day southern Jordan. There they discovered the scale of the enemy, a combined Byzantine, Roman and Arab Christian force of between 100,000 and 200,000 men, and led by the Byzantine Viceroy Theodore and the Ghassanid Prince Shurabil. Some historians describe it as one of the largest armies ever assembled in that region up to that time. The Muslims outnumbered more than 30 to 1. Some narrations say 66 to 1. Realized annihilation was almost certain. The battle began at dawn. Zayd ibn Haritha encouraged the banner and fought until he was overwhelmed and martyred. Jafar ibn Abi Talib took the standard with his right hand. When it was cut off, he held it with his left. When the left was severed, he clutched the banner to his chest with his stumps until he too fell, receiving over 90 wounds, 70 plus from swords and spears on his front. Proof he never turned his back. Abdullah ibn Rawaha then took the banner, hesitated briefly in fear, recited poetry to steel himself, and charged forward until he was killed. Suddenly, the Muslim army had no commander and was on the verge of total collapse. Panic spread. At that critical moment, a man rode forward, seized the banner, and shouted, "Why, Mansur Amit!" O victorious ones, attack. It was Khalid ibn al-Walid. What he did next is studied in military academies to this day. First, he immediately stopped the headlong charge that was bleeding the Muslims dry. He reorganized the army into defensive formations. Then he executed one of the most brilliant tactical deceptions in pre-modern warfare. He ordered the rear units to march to the front and the front units to the rear, raising new banners and kicking up huge clouds of dust. The left wing moved to the right to the left, Fresh horses were brought forward, and trumpets were sounded as though massive reinforcements had just arrived. To the Romans and Ghassanids, watching from afar, had basically taken her. It appeared that a huge new Muslim army had suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Confusion spread in their ranks. Khalid then began a disciplined fighting withdrawal, something almost unheard of in 7th century Arabia, where retreat usually meant slaughter. He divided the army into small mobile units that covered each other, used the terrain masterfully, and even launched limited counterattacks to slow the enemy pursuit. Over the next 2 days and nights, extracted the army across the desert with astonishingly low further casualties. When the remnants of the expedition finally reached, some people unaware of the impossible odds call them Fara Minal, jihad. Those who fled from jihad, the Prophet immediately rebuked them and said, "Now was a maisbud now yalanimling kaim hovatai pormi to ni evai." No, they are not fleers. They are those who will return to fight again, if Allah wills. While the army was still on its way back, the Prophet stood in the mosque, and as Qurtubi says, the divine revelation narrated the events as they unfolded hundreds of miles away. He described the martyrdom of Zayd. Then I see Jafar flying with the angels in paradise with wings of ruby. Then Abdullah. When he saw Khalid take command, he declared, "Yuha Zayza Biva and Priva no the of the Now the heat of battle has intensified. The banner has been taken by a sword from the swords of Allah. Allah will grant victory through him. From that day forward, Khalid was known as Sayfullah, the sword of Allah, though Muta was technically a strategic withdrawal. It was a moral and psychological triumph. The Byzantines, who had assembled one of their largest field armies ever, failed to destroy a tiny Muslim force. The Romans themselves later called it a victory for the Arabs, for the new Muslim, Khalid ibn al-Walid. It was proof that Allah had truly transformed the former enemy of Islam into its most lethal weapon. Less than 7 years later, that same sword of Allah would bring the Byzantine Empire itself to its knees at Yarmouk, conquest of Makkah, and the final battles with the Prophet by Ramadan 8, AH January 630 CE, only 18 months after Khalid's acceptance of Islam. The situation had reversed completely. The Quraysh had violated the treaty of Hudaybiyah by aiding attack on a Muslim allied tribe. The Prophet mobilized 10 Zalozos fighters, the largest Muslim army ever assembled, and marched on Makkah in complete secrecy. Khalid ibn al-Walid, now one of the most trusted commanders was given command of one of the four main columns entering Makkah. His division consisted largely of recent converts from the formerly hostile tribes, Banu Sulaim and others. The Prophet Allah had basically taken her placed Khalid on the southern approach through Qada, the most likely to enter the city, because that was where the fiercest resistance was expected from men like Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl and Safwan ibn Umayyah. On the morning of 11th Ramadan 8H, the Muslim armies entered Makkah from all sides. Abu Sufyan, watching from a hill, was stunned into surrender when he saw the sea of campfires before. The Prophet declared general amnesty. Whoever enters the house of Abu Sufyan is safe. Whoever lays down arms is safe. Whoever enters the Kaaba is safe. Whoever closes his door is safe. Only Khalid's column met real fighting. Ikrimah, Safwan, and Suhail ibn Amr rallied a small force of diehards and tried to block the advance at al-Qandama. Khalid's men charged in a sharp clash. 12 of the Quraysh were killed and the rest fled. Khalid lost only 2 men who had taken a wrong turn and were killed by mistake. Khalid then marched up to the Kaaba unimpeded. When the Prophet I heard there had been fighting, he asked, "Did I not forbid killing?" Khalid replied, "They attacked us, O Messenger of Allah, and we defended ourselves. The Prophet I accepted this, but reminded everyone of the day of mercy." Khalid stood guard while the Prophet personally destroyed the 360 idols around the Kaaba, reciting, "Truth has come and falsehood has vanished." Makkah was conquered with almost no bloodshed, and brief engagement being the only exception. The city of his birth, where he had once led armies against Muhammad, now submitted to the very man he had tried to kill at Uhud. Battle of Hunayn, Shawwal 8 AH to February 630 CE, barely 3 weeks later, the tribes of Hawazin and Thaqif, fearing Muslim dominance, massed 20,000 warriors under Malik ibn Auf and marched toward Makkah with their women, children, and livestock to ensure they would fight to the death. The Muslims, now 12,000 strong and over, confident after Makkah, advanced into the narrow valley of Hunayn at dawn. And the enemy had hidden archers and spearmen in the side ravines. As the Muslim vanguard entered, thousands of arrows rained down, and Hawazin charged from 3 sides. Panic seized the army. Many of the new converts and Banu Sulaim fled. For a terrifying moment, it looked like Uhud all over again. The Prophet mounted on his white mule Doldol, remained rock steady with only a handful of companions around him. Abbas Ali, Abu Bakr, Umar, Usama, and Khalid among them. Abbas called out in his booming voice, "O people of the tree of pledge! O Ansar!" Slowly the army rallied. Khalid ibn al-Walid was wounded in the fighting but played a key role in the counter attack. The Prophet ordered a daring downhill charge. Khalid led part of the reformed right wing, smashing into the Hawazin left. Within hours, the tide turned completely. Hawazin suffered thousands dead. The Muslims captured enormous booty, including 24,000 camels and 6,000 women and children, all later released without ransom on the Prophet's orders. Siege of Taif, Shawwal, Al-Qoda 8AH, the defeated Hawazin leaders fled to the fortified city of Taif. The Prophet laid siege with his full army. Taif's walls were high and its defenders rained hot iron scraps on the attackers. For the first time, the Muslims used catapults. Manjanik operated under Khalid's supervision. He had seen them during his Islamic campaigns. After almost 3 weeks, with little progress and many wounded, including Khalid again, the Prophet consulted Nawfal ibn Muawiyah, who said the people of Taif were like a fox in its hole. If you stay, you catch it. If you leave, it harms no one. The Prophet smiled and lifted the siege, saying, "Yes, we will return if Allah wills." A year later, the entire population of Taif came to submit to Islam voluntarily. Proof that hearts, not walls, cannot be conquered by force alone. In these 3 campaigns, Makkah, Hunayn, and Taif, Khalid fought directly under the Prophet's banner for the last time. The man who once tried to annihilate Islam at Uhud had now become instrumental in establishing across the entire Arabian Peninsula. The Prophet passed away only 2 years later. Khalid would spend the rest of his life ensuring that the light and those final battles with Muhammad would never be extinguished. During Abu Bakr's caliphate, 634 CE, the Prophet passed away on the 12 Rabi al-Awwal 11 AH 8 June 632 CE. Almost immediately, large parts of Arabia fell into apostasy. Ridda tribes that had entered Islam only recently refused to pay zakat, while others followed false prophets. Muzaylima in Yamama, Tulayha in the north, Aswad al-Ansi in Yemen, and Lakate in the south. The very existence of the Muslim state, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him, the first caliph, declared, "By Allah, I will fight those who differentiate between Salah and Zakat." He needed his best general. That general was Khalid ibn al-Walid. The Ridda Wars, Wars of Apostasy 1112 AH, Abu Bakr sent Khalid with a small mobile force of 4,000 to 6,000 men on a lightning campaign that is still studied for its speed and decisiveness as Buzakas against Tulayha, al-Asadiya. Khalid crushed the false Prophet's army in a single night attack. Tulayha fled and later accepted Islam sincerely. Banu Tamim, and the battle against Sajah, the false prophetess who had married Musaylima. Khalid defeated her forces and she fled back to Iraq, Yamama, and the Garden of Deaths against Musaylima al-Kadab, the bloodiest battle of the Ridda Wars. Musaylima had 40,000 men fortified in walled gardens. The Muslims suffered terribly. Over 200 martyrs, including 360 Hafaz of the Quran. Khalid finally broke through after a ferocious fight. Musaylima was killed by Washi ibn Harb, the former slave who had killed Hamza at Uhud and was now Muslim. The apostasy in Central Arabia was crushed. Within 6 months, Khalid had subdued almost the entire peninsula. Abu Bakr then turned his attention outward. Conquest of Iraq, so 12 AH 633 CE. The Sassanid Persian Empire was in chaos after the death of Khosrow Tain. Abu Bakr sent Khalid to open the Iraqi front. With only 18 Zalozan men, Khalid crossed the desert in an astonishing 18-day march, a route later thought impossible, appearing suddenly on the Euphrates like a thunderbolt. Battle of Chains, Dat al-Salazil. The Persians chained their soldiers together to prevent retreat. Khalid shattered them. Battle of the River al-Madhar. Battle of Walaja. Khalid used one of his most famous tactics, double envelopment, as like Hannibal at canny centuries earlier. He hid 2 cavalry detachments behind hills, lured the Persians forward, and completely encircled them. Battle of Olays. Another crushing victory. So much Persian blood flowed that the Muslims dammed the stream and prayed on the blood-soaked ground, hence the name River of Blood. Al-Hira, the ancient capital of the Lakhmids, surrendered without a fight and paid jizya. In less than a year, Khalid conquered most of lower Iraq from the Persians, reaching as far as al-Anbar and al-Tammar. Says Allah had a controversial incident with Malik ibn Nuwayr in late 12 AH. Khalid was sent against the Banu Tamim branch led by Malik ibn Nuwayra, respected tribal chief and former Muslim tax collector. Reports stopped Khalid that Malik had stopped forwarding to Madinah, declared the obligation void after the Prophet's death, and was in contact with Sajah. When Khalid's forces arrived, Malik's men laid down their arms and said the Adhan and prayed. Accounts differ sharply from this point onward. One version, Malik openly said, your master means the Prophet is dead, we no longer pay zakat. Fighting broke out again. Another version, Malik's men prayed, but their Adhan was late or imperfect, and Malik himself gave ambiguous answers when questioned about zakat. Ordered Malik executed and married his widow Layla bint al-Minhalis, known as one of the most beautiful women in Arabia, the same night or shortly after. The news reached Madinah. Umar ibn Khattab was furious and demanded that Abu Bakr punish Khalid for murder and possible adultery since the waiting period had not been observed. Abu Bakr defended Khalid, saying, "Hey," interpreted as Jihad, and made a mistake. Sigh if he dead. The sword of Allah shall not be sheathed. Abu Bakr paid blood, money to Malik's family from the state treasury and freed Layla. Khalid swore he had not touched her until the waiting period was complete. Scholars remain divided to this day. Some call it a tragic error of judgment in the fog of war. Others insist Malik had technically apostatized and Khalid's ruling was correct under the circumstances. Wept when confronted by Umar later and said, "When Allah's enemy is killed, it does not matter who kills him." In 13 Abu Bakr, on his deathbed, Kurtuli to the Syrian front to reinforce the Muslim armies already fighting the Byzantines. The greatest phase of Khalid's career, the conquest of Syria, was about to begin. In just 2 years under Abu Bakr, Khalid had saved the caliphate from collapse, crushed the apostates, and opened the gates of two empires, Persian and Byzantine. The tiny community of Medina now controlled most of Arabia and large chunks of Iraq. The world would never be the same. During Umar's caliphate, the conquest of Syria, 638 CE, when Abu Bakr as Siddiq passed away in 13 AH, 634 CE. He appointed Umar ibn al-Khattab as the second caliph. At that moment, 4 separate Muslim armies were already operating in Syria against the Byzantine Empire, but they were outnumbered and in danger of being defeated piecemeal. Umar's first military decision was to unite all forces under one commander and send the only man capable of defeating the Romans on our own soil, Khalid ibn al-Walid. Khalid received the order while he was still in Iraq. He left immediately with 9,000 of his veteran troops and performed one of the most extraordinary marches in military history, crossing 500 miles of waterless desert in midsummer, using camels that had their stomachs filled with water as living water, skins. He emerged unexpectedly in northern Syria like a miracle, saving the Muslim armies from collapse. Early victories in Syria, Battle of Ajnadains, Jumada I 13 AH, July 634 CE. Khalid's first major clash with the main Byzantine field army, 100 Al-Zanab's men. He defeated and killed the Byzantine commander Warden. This victory opened Palestine. Battle of Pella, File and Marjal, Rums. Khalid annihilated another large Byzantine force and gained control of the Jordan Valley. Damascus was besieged and captured in September 634 CE. After a 6-month investment, the city surrendered half by force, half by treaty. By early 635 CE, the Muslims controlled most of southern and central Syria. But Emperor Heraclius assembled the largest army the Eastern Roman Empire had ever fielded in the Levant. Estimates range from 150,000 to 200,000, to 240,000 men behind or the supreme command of Theodore Tritarius in some sources. The stage was set for the decisive confrontation. The Battle of Yarmouk, Rajab Jumada I-15, AH August 6036 CE, the greatest victory of Khalid's life and one of the most consequential battles in world history. Muslim strength, 40,000 Saz, including 10,000 under Khalid from Iraq. Byzantine strength, 150,000 to 40,000 Byzantine, Armenian Ghassanid, and other Christian era allies. The two armies faced each other across the Yarmouk River plain for weeks, negotiating and maneuvering. The Byzantines, confident in their numbers, tried to crush the Muslims in one massive frontal assault. Khalid did something revolutionary. He divided his relatively small army into 36 40 infantry squadrons, Curtis in a flexible formation that could move independently, centuries ahead of European divisions. For 5 days, the Byzantines attacked and were held. On the sixth day, the day of lost for the Romans, the day of dust storm for the Muslims, for violent windstorm blew directly into the Byzantine faces, blinding them with dust and sand. Khalid had been waiting for exactly this moment. He launched the most perfectly executed battle of encirclement in pre-modern history. Feigned retreats by the Muslim cavalry lured the Byzantine heavy infantry forward. Mobile Muslim horse archers harassed and separated the enemy formations. Khalid personally led the elite mobile guard, the death squad of 4,000 hand-picked veterans in repeated charges. He cut off the only Byzantine escape, the Brute, to the north by seizing the bridge over the Wadi al-Rukud ravine. By nightfall, the entire Byzantine army was trapped in a pocket with cliffs on one side and Muslim swords on the others. Tens of thousands of Romans leapt to their deaths rather than face the Muslim blades. Byzantine chroniclers recorded 100 dualer, 100 or 120,000 to 150,000 dead. The Muslim losses were around 3,000 to 4,000. It was total annihilation. The Byzantine army in Syria ceased to exist as a fighting force. Modern military academies, West Point, Sandhurst, Franz, Itzipo, still teach Yarmouk as a classic example of maneuver warfare, deception, and decisive battle. The fall of the rest of Syria after Yarmouk, the conquest, became almost unstoppable. Second capture of Damascus, a 635-636 CE, now permanent Battle of Hazir, 606 CE. Khalid destroyed another 70,000 man relief army in a single morning. Chinazrin, Chalcis, Aleppo, Antioch all surrendered or were stormed. Caesarea Maritima, the last Byzantine stronghold on the coast, fell in 6040 CE after a long siege. Jerusalem saw Beit al-Maqdis al-Quds, 637 CE. The inhabitants refused to surrender to anyone except the Caliph himself. Umar traveled from Medina in person, dressed in a simple patched cloak, riding a donkey. Patriarch Sophronius handed over the keys of the city. Umar death of Khalid ibn al-Walid, 21 AH 642 CE, in the year 21 AHA 642 CE. The undefeated sword of Allah lay dying not on a battlefield, surrounded by the clash of swords and the cries of victory, but on a simple bed in a modest house in Hims, Syria. Khalid had been removed from command by Umar ibn al-Khattab 6 years earlier in 17 AH. After the conquest of Syria was complete, the Caliph feared that people were beginning to say, Khalid won the battle instead of Allah granted victory. Umar relieved him with the famous words, let the women of Arabia know that they will never again bear a man like Khalid ibn al-Walid. Khalid accepted the decision without a word of protest. He handed over his sword, put on the coarse clothes of an ordinary soldier, and continued fighting in the ranks until the very end of the Syrian and Iraqi campaigns. When peace finally came to the newly conquered lands, he retired to Hims, married, and lived quietly, something that tormented his soul more than any enemy ever had. As death approached in 21 AH, Claude's family and close companions gathered around him. His body, once the terror of two empires, was now thin and weakened by a plague that was sweeping through Syria. When the women began to weep, Khalid opened his eyes and looked at the scars that covered almost every inch of his skin. He called for his war horse and his weapons to be brought into the room. Then, with tears streaming down his face, he spoke his final words, words echoed through the centuries. 波这个维权的就都说，有按考虑留言就还原了多是说头湾的天天有班子的台湾的蒙达，万一按过一张零哈到零。我在这儿有一个村东来的，我这样的，就还有到那还有，比如说通满外都连那边就是什么，包完之后三他们头一个按照五个往上归，有的归让他属于他都拿归了，为了货币的缺品。We were all looking after all the months. I have fallen in more than under the battle. Great charge after fierce combat. For my in word or learning country. Sharing the picture of the bigger from us. Is not a handspan on my body that is not marked by the slash of sword, the stab of a spear, or the pierce of an arrow. And yet here I am, dying on my bed, like an old camel dies. May the eyes of cowards never find sleep. He repeated the last phrase 3 times, each time more bitterly. U and 4 a pilzo 19 lodid on heinren May the cowards never sleep in peace. Khalid had always longed for shahada, martyrdom in the path of Allah. He used to say, I would rather die with a sword in my hand than on a soft bed. But Allah had decreed otherwise. The man who had never tasted defeat in war was denied the death he craved most. When he passed away, the entire city of Hims mourned. Omar ibn al-Khattab, hundreds of miles away in Medina, wept openly when the news reached him and said, may Allah have mercy on you, O Abu Suleiman. You achieved what you achieved. Allah had basically taken. Then you were taken while you were still striving. At the funeral, Khalid's arms and armor were carried before his body. The eulogy was delivered by none other than Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, the supreme commander who had replaced him. He said, today a man has died who had no equal in the defense of Islam, neither before him nor after him. Khalid was buried in hymns in a simple grave. His war horse never ridden again, and his famous sword, which had drunk the blood of Persians and Romans alike, was laid to rest with him. The sword of Allah was sheathed forever, not broken on the battlefield, but returned gently to its master by the one who had unsheathed it in the first place. To this day, when Muslims speak of courage, sacrifice, and the fleeting nature of this world, they remember the tears of Khalid ibn al-Walid on his deathbed, a man who conquered empires, but could not conquer death itself, except through the mercy of the one who granted him victory in every battle and peace in the next life.